All right, all right, all right, all right, all right, all right, all right. Welcome in to the another episode of the Gridiron Grubb podcast. Today, we're going to be breaking down some of our weekend's games. We're going to check out 8 games today, so we're going to get started, get going. Welcome in. Don't forget, follow at Gridiron Grubb on Twitter. Subscribe here on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast. Follow along on those. Subscribe on those. Apple Podcast, 5 stars. Give me those 5-star reviews. I would love it from you. It would be greatly appreciated. So anyway, moving along, getting into Thursday's podcast. Let's move it along. We're going to break down some of our week 4 games. We've got 8 games to break down in this episode, so we're not going to mess around. We're going to get to them, check them out, see what's going on this weekend. Here are the games we're looking at today. We're going to do Tennessee at the Jets, Chiefs at the Eagles, Panthers at the Cowboys, Giants at Saints. A big one that I think might be a lot of fun is Browns at Vikings and Lions Bears. I know, might be a little bit of a stinker, maybe a little boring. It might be some good football compared between the two teams, but it might be a little boring. Texans Bills, I not calling that any excitement at all. One of the games that might be exciting is Colts Dolphins, and we'll get to that in the last part of the episode. So, starting with Titans Jets. This one, not that exciting, I don't think, as you look at the quarterback comparison with Tannehill, Wilson. Not very good looking for Wilson right now. He's really struggled. Tannehill, he hasn't really done much better, except he hasn't thrown as many INTs as Wilson, and obviously his completion percentage is a lot better. And then you're looking at the QBR rating. I mean, Wilson is way down there. However, Tannehill has not had a spectacular season yet so far either. But I just don't think the Jets are there yet. Wilson is really, really struggling. He's struggling reading defenses of any sort, even basic defenses he's really struggled with. Jets fans right now, I know they're sucking it up because they were really excited to get rid of Sam Darnold and get this kid in there. I don't know if they're questioning themselves now. There might be a little bit of questioning going on there. I know he's young and I know he's a rookie, and I don't like to knock on the young quarterbacks as if I talked yesterday. However, maybe they're either relying on too much of him to get things done. Maybe the offense is set up that way. But right now, he's not getting it done. And he looks skittish in that pocket. He really does. He's not making bright decisions. Some of our other young quarterbacks that I got into yesterday, they are having their own struggles in their own ways, but Wilson is really struggling. And, yeah, it's just tough. So the fantasy outlook here, you're looking at, I think Tannehill's going to have a decent day. It won't be spectacular. I think that Jets defense may push him out a little bit, but the main reason I'm saying that is because I think they're going to run the ball a lot. I think Derrick Henry is going to have a big day. I think McNichols, he got involved this last week and had a touchdown. I just see them going that way, especially as the game gets later in the game. A.J. Brown and Julio Jones both questionable, and this is one of the main reasons I don't know how big a day Ryan Tannehill is going to have. Both of them are not practicing, so we'll see how that goes as of this Thursday afternoon when this is being filmed. However, Chester Rogers, and then you got Nick Westbrook-Akina. I mean, come on now. How could you just fail with those two guys, and Jeff Swaim at tight end? However, I do think it's going to be a struggle day for Tannehill if Brown and or Jones or both. If both don't play, then he's really going to have a tough day in the fantasy realm as far as Tannehill goes, I would presume. Derrick Henry, McNichols may be the guys that pick this up. Chester Rogers, if both those receivers don't play or one don't play, then you're looking at him probably getting most of the looks. But, Akina came in last week, Westbrook-Akina, and made his plays. So it's going to be tough. Throw it up in the air there. I would love this game if I was a Tennessee, if I owned these players in fantasy. I'm just a little worried about the passing game, so we'll see how that goes. The Jets, I think they may have some potential here. The problem is their backfield is a muddled mess. Who knows what's going to happen? You don't know who's going to get the ball from week to week, who's going to get the carries. They're all kind of splitting it 6, 7, 8, 9 carries each a week. 5, 6, 7 carries each. So it's really tough to decide who's going to be the guy to go to there. If Jamison Crowder does play this week, he's been a limited participant in practice the last 2 days. That would be big for them. However, with Elijah Moore, he's in concussion protocol. He has not practiced yet during the week. That leaves it up to, I guess, Braxton Berrios. And maybe they get Mims coming around. Not sure how they're going to do with him. You do have Tyler Kroft has been questionable. He's been having limited practices. So the Jets, it's going to be a tough stretch there. If Crowder can get in the games, I really think Zach Wilson really needs a guy like him to help his stats out, help his world out there, as a quarterback. So moving into that, let's not get stuck on that. I think it's a blowout. I think it's 31-13. I think we got the flip number there. The spread is 7.5. I'm obviously got the Titans beating the spread on that. It's 45.5 is the over-under, 45.5. I'm obviously by 1.5 have it under. Titans minus 350 in the money line. Jets plus 290. I don't know. I wouldn't be taking the Jets. However, maybe you could sneak in some money. I think it's big on the scoreboard. Now, if Jones and Brown don't play, this is probably going to change a little bit. As far as the books go and as far as where my score would go on this. If they don't play, I wouldn't have it as big of a blowout. Maybe going down to a touchdown less, 24-13, somewhere in there as they run the ball more and they run the clock more. That would be where I'm at on that. So moving into the next game, we have Chiefs-Eagles. Okay, now this game I think could surprisingly, shockingly be good. Everybody has been on Hurts, and I know it was on the big stage the other night, and I think he didn't have a good game. But by the way, those are the only 2 interceptions he's thrown in the entire season. Look at these stats. So he's not all that bad. Look at the QBR. Look at his comparisons against Mahomes this week. I think the Eagles can set up an offense to fit him and his needs. I think they've left him out in the cold a little bit right now, and that's okay. He can get back in the game. But looking at this game, oh my goodness, I don't know if this is when the Chiefs come around and make up for lost time from last week. So last week this went on, and they lost. So we're 1-2 with the Chiefs, and people, kind of, I wouldn't say panicking. A lot of fans are really putting the pressure on them like they've done some horrific thing. Look, they've had some good games against some good teams. The Chargers game, they don't turn the ball over 4 times. The Chargers probably don't win that game, so let's look at that honestly. Now, 2 of the forced fumbles, you're going to go with the Chargers. They earned those. But the Mahomes throw it up interception, that's not worth evaluating. He's got to stop doing those things. I know occasionally it works out for him, but there's also times it's not going to work out, and as teams start to scout for that and these guys start covering, you've got to cover the entire play, right? You can't give up till the whistle blows. A lot of these times in cornerbacks, as players run to the other side of the field, receivers, all these things, they're not stopping in Kansas City because Mahomes could throw it to them at any moment. So, but going into this, look at Hurts. He's not doing so bad as everybody's acting like. If you look at his numbers and his stats, has some of his play been questionable? Yes, but he's a young quarterback. And again, I talked about him yesterday on the podcast. He is a rookie. This is not his rookie season, but this is his rookie season. You can't judge off of a couple games. And the couple games he's played, he's done just fine. He really has. The interception touchdown last game, and I said this yesterday on the podcast, against the Cowboys, that was a very lazy out pattern by Devonta Smith. And he needs to do better than that. There was a lot of his fault on that pass play. And I know people throw it at Hurts because he threw it a little behind him. But it was a tough route to throw to when you run a circle in route and it's supposed to be, or a circled out route and it's supposed to be, you got to stick your foot in the ground and hit that out route. And he did this little lazy. So I think Hurts is going to come around. Looking at the fantasy outlook here, I don't know what Philadelphia defense is going to show up. So do we see the defense that showed up the first 2 weeks, or do we see the defense that showed up against the Cowboys? If the defense that shows up against the Cowboys, everybody on this screen looks good to me. Minus maybe a Darrell Williams, but he might get he gets in and gets some sneaky touchdowns and on the goal line work, coming out of the backfield, little passes. So maybe he's even worth it as a flyer. If the defense shows up that showed up against the Cowboys, I like all these guys on this screen right here. Why? I mean, how could you not? How could you not like these guys? Any of them. Name one, and I'll give you a reason to like them. If that Philadelphia defense shows up that showed up against the Cowboys. Obviously, Mahomes always going to have his points, especially against a team like this. Tyreek Hill, now he didn't have big points last week. He made some catches. Travis Kelce obviously going to do what he does, his thing. So I think this is a good, if you got any of these guys in fantasy, you're feeling good about your week going against Philadelphia. Now on the other side, I think Philadelphia has a good chance this week. Look, the Chiefs have not put in this extra defensive juggernaut. Their offense is what does the game. The defense can hold them in games and can do some things, but it's not one of the biggest dominant defenses in the league. They are good. They're not a dominant D. I think we can get some points here out of Hurts, especially with his running yards. I think that's going to be a crucial thing this week because of the way the Chiefs run a defense. I think this last week, the Eagles could have used Hurts more in a better, different way against that Cowboys defense, and they really set him up to fail, in my opinion. Miles Sanders, I think he could get a little run here this week. They've really got to start handing, they got this young rookie, basically quarterback in the backfield. They're not handing Sanders the ball. I mean, come on, you've got to get him going, screen passes. You got to get something going in the mix. You can't just have Jalen Hurts trying to pass every play. It's not worth it, especially with that kid. Devontae Smith, Rager. Quez Watkins is really stepping up. He might be a surprise sleeper of this whole entire game, so watch out for him. Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz, you don't know who's going to get the play. One guy gets a touchdown, the other guy gets some catches. Back and forth they go. So they'll probably both have points for a tight end. You don't know who's going to get the touchdown or who's going to get the big play, but both those guys are probably serviceable tight ends looking at this week. So, with that said, this game, I've got Chiefs by 10, 34-24. Obviously, with Chiefs -7, I've got them beating the spread. I've got the plus on the plus-minus side, 54.5. I've got, obviously, 58 points going up there, so I've got that covered. Chiefs, money line, -350. Eagles, +270. Not sure if you want to take that bet. It is in Philadelphia. You could throw a little money down on the Eagles and hope that the Chiefs, with Andy Reid having a health scare and the way they've been playing, maybe they come out a little sluggish, but I would probably guess they're going to be on fire. So, but you could put a little money down there on the Eagles. You don't want to throw it big, but that's something maybe you could, on the straight across money line, you could come across with. Now, moving into what I think is actually the game of the week, we got our Cowboys versus our Panthers. Really good game. I think this is going to be a good one. You've got Matt Rule coming back where he just left from in Baylor, obviously right down the road. I think this is really good. Sam Darnold has blown us all away. However, I particularly saw this coming, and so did a lot of people. I think he was it wasn't even everybody blames Gase, but it wasn't just Gase. The weapons, the offensive line had tons of injuries his time in New York. look, this team looks good. Now, I know McCaffrey's not there, and that's usually a huge helper for any quarterback. That's obviously, you've got him coming out of the backfield. You've got Darnold being able to play action and throw these other passes as people kind of worry more about McCaffrey, and obviously he's going to be out for this game. However, Hubbard, he can step in as a rookie and he can do some things. Don't expect him to come in and be McCaffrey. That's where people kind of fail, and a lot of times in different things is they take a guy and they think he's going to be McCaffrey. Especially in the tight end world, they think a tight end is going to come in and be, Kelsey's hurt, so they think Blake Bell's not going to be the Kelsey because it's that offense. Doesn't happen. Ask all the people that were Gronk owners in Gronk times in New England how that went when Gronk would get hurt and they would have this tight end. Everybody goes scrambling for that new tight end, and it doesn't work out. So you look at these two quarterbacks here. Obviously, Dak is having a hell of a season. He hasn't thrown the ball a ton. There was a game, I love that because this last game they actually mixed the run. And the first two games he threw quite a bit, but as the last game evolved, he didn't throw a lot, which was great. But look at his pass yards, right? So he's got 10 less pass yards than Darnold, but he's got six TDs to 2 interceptions. Completion percentage, this is what's off the chart. He's 63 of 84. That's 77.5%. His QBR, 110.1. This guy is rolling. He never rushed TD yet, but, really, he hasn't needed to do any of that. So it's looking good for the Cowboys as far as Dak goes. In this game, obviously, fantasy outlook, you got the Cowboys. You're going to go Dak Prescott. He's going to have probably a pretty decent game. The Panthers' defense is tough. I think with the Tony Pollard, Ezekiel Elliott split, it's really tough to call there. You know that Zeke's going to get the goal line carries for the most part, but they sneak Pollard in there too, so it's kind of a toss-up. But I think these guys get their average points. Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Cedric Wilson, these guys are going to be at this game. I don't know if they necessarily have huge games. Again, the Panthers have been putting down now Jace Horn, I know, and then they brought in the trade from the Jaguars, but I don't know if they're ready to go with all that. Obviously, again, you can't just bring in a guy and he's going to run your system immediately. However, I do think, and Amari Cooper's got some cracked ribs going on, hurt ribs, so he didn't show out in this last game. He made a few catches. CeeDee Lamb was there for a few big plays. It's just really tough to say Cooper's going to have a big week if those ribs are still affecting him. You could tell this last week he wasn't really focused in on the offense from Dak and from the play calling at all. So CeeDee Lamb is probably the guy to go with this week as far as receivers from the Cowboys. Dalton Schultz, he put out this last game, so who knows. But I wouldn't trust him as the mainstay as a tight end as far as week after week. But you don't know. Maybe that was his time in his breakthrough game. Obviously, you're looking at fantasy outlook here. I think Sam Darnold has a decent game. I don't think he's going to have huge numbers, but you're looking at probably like a 16 to 18 point game for him as far as fantasy outlook. Chuba Hubbard, again, we're not sure what we're going to get from him. It worries me, and how much does Royce Freeman come in there and run on first and second down on some of the drives. So we'll see how that goes. This is kind of a week that it's up in the air. Yes, there's no McCaffrey, but we're going to learn about who Chuba Hubbard is this week. We'll see. See where he goes. DJ Moore, this connection between Darnold and Moore is becoming huge. It's absolutely looking good. And then you got this rookie, Terrace Marshall. He's looking pretty good. He's not, as the talk that was so huge in the offseason, but even with Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, the connection that him and Darnold are putting out is incredible. So you're not going to be able to knock on that. But DJ Moore, look for him to get his points this week. Now, the big trade was they traded Dan Arnold to the Jaguars. So we're going to see. They're talking about Tommy Trimble. And, you got Ian Thomas there. He's supposed to have been ball out for a few years, hasn't done it. We're going to find out who and what the way the offense runs around that this week. Obviously, Trimble right now is ahead on the depth chart, and they said that they're really excited about the kid, so we'll see where that goes. So I got this one. I think because the Cowboys are at home, I've got it close, 3-point game, 27-24. Cowboys beat the spread because, they don't beat the spread because they're 4-point favorites. I think they miss out on that by a point and a half. I think over under, obviously, I've got it beating by a point. At 50.5, I've got 51. Your money line, you got Carolina plus 175, Dallas minus 210. I could throw some money on Carolina for this game and hope for some return. I wouldn't, again, nothing big chunk, but this might be a good money line bet if you want to throw some money on Carolina and their defense comes out, makes those plays that they need to make this game flip in their favor, because that's why this 27-24 I've got up there. I've got that with Dak playing a good game and the game going well for the Cowboys. So if you get that one flip, this could change the whole thing. So moving into our next game, Saints-Giants. Here's another who knows, but it might actually turn out as a good. You just never know what Giants team is going to show up. Sometimes they show up and challenge the competition, and sometimes they take the week off. So we're going to see what we get here. Daniel Jones hasn't had all that bad of a season passing. Now, he's got only 2 TDs, but he hasn't thrown an interception. It's his fumbles that caused the problem. But he has thrown for 782 yards, and it's been good for him. Now, the Saints, they've been kind of protecting Winston, and he has thrown 7 TDs. Most of that's coming, short passes in the red zone. He's had a couple to Kamara and all that type of stuff. He's only got 60% completion, but he does have a QBR of 101. This is all over the place. He only has 387 yards passing. I mean, it's absolutely incredible to see what's going on there, evolving there. They're being very cautious with him. I think they're trying to teach him the game that was missing out of his game for so long. And, hopefully that changes for him. And he does kind of learn the game, and he's learning not to fit the ball into places he shouldn't, because he does have a spectacular arm, and he's a good quarterback if he got rid of those interceptions, and that's what everybody's been waiting years for, and he hadn't done it. This year so far, he's done it, but he hasn't had a lot of balls thrown. So we'll see what happens there with him. This game, Daniel Jones, I figure he's going to get a little bit of points. Obviously, if he's your starting quarterback or you're in a 2-quarterback league, a dynasty league, a super flex league, he's probably starting for you this week, unless you've got someone better. So Saquon Barkley, this might be a good week for him. I think they've really got to lean on him a lot of, and now they haven't been leaning on him enough as he comes out of his surgery from last season. I think it's time, though. This last week he got revved up. We're in week 4. He looks like he's strong. His practices are going good. And Brightwell has come along and taken over the number 2 job. Not sure how much play he gets. I wouldn't, as a fantasy outlook, I wouldn't be going for him. Now, Kenny Golladay, as far as wide receivers, he's had limited practice all week. He's questionable. And, the other receivers, that's the problem, is you're looking at Darius Slayton and Sterling Shepard are both out. It looks like their DNP did not practice all week. So it looks like Kadarius Toney and maybe somebody like Colin Johnson is going to have to step up for that team. Evan Ingram and Kyle Rudolph, this is kind of one of those things you don't know which tight end they're going to have to use. Neither one has really stepped up in any manner for this team. Of course, nobody really has, period. Not super excited about any fantasy outlook for anybody here except for maybe Barkley. And like I say, Jones will get he just gets his points every week as far as a 16 to 19 point range. So that's where we're looking as far as that team. Now the Saints, this might be a big game because the Giants D, again, this is one of those defenses. If it shows up, they might. The Saints are still going to get their points, and if they don't show up, all these guys on this screen here might go just crazy with points. So Jameis Winston, not sure. Again, he hasn't had a big game as far as a quarterback. They're not throwing a lot. They're not putting a lot on his plate, and they're being very cautious with him. Alvin Kamara, you're looking at probably a huge game. It's probably one of his biggest games, I would say, of the season. As far as points go for him, this might be big. And again, back to the receivers here. You don't know who's going to have what. with Callaway and Harris going, you just don't know who's going to have what. And, we're going to find out. And, Troutman at tight end, we don't know who's going to get the ball at tight end for the Saints. Not a place I would look for points from that position in fantasy football. So final score, I've got Saints by 11, 31-20, which is way over the over-under. But the Saints beat the spread with, as their 7.5 points, minus 7.5. So they beat the spread, I think, with a 31-20 win. Again, I don't know how they have the over-under so low at 43.5, so I'm definitely taking that on the over. Giants plus 280, Saints minus 360. Probably staying away from those on the money line unless you're really hoping the Giants kind of play out there on the road. Sometimes the Giants, they're a team like that plays better on the road than they do in New York. It's kind of weird. So we'll see if they come this week. Might be a place you place a little bit of money again. Moving on to the next game, we got Vikings Browns. Now I think, so besides the Cowboys Panthers, I think this is the game of the week. As far as that goes, these are the two top games. This is going to be good. So Browns, again, neither team has thrown the ball a ton, but look at those yards and just those. And he only has 70 passing attempts, does Kirk Cousins, and he's put up 918 yards. That's really incredible. He's got a QBR of 118. That is, he's having an amazing season. He's got 8 touchdowns, no interceptions. It's like the opposite Kirk Cousins that we've seen as far as like turning the ball over when it matters. He hasn't done that this year. He doesn't usually have a ton of turnovers, but he turns them over when they matter the most, and he hasn't done that yet. Gonna find out this week against this Browns defense. Mayfield, he's on a team where he doesn't throw the ball a ton anyway, because you have both those running backs going. Now, he's 2-2, 2 TDs and 2 interceptions, but he is 73%, 0.1 difference compared to Kirk Cousins. So he's having a good season. He's got a 102 QBR, looking good for Mayfield. The outlook here, Kirk Cousins, this is going to be, where does the questions come from this week? Because that Browns defense has been stingy, okay? So can Kirk get it done this week? We're going to find out if he does have what his numbers are speaking so far this season. Cook, he's been limited all week with his knee injury, but Matheson looked really good last week. He really did. He came in, he wasn't just a serviceable back, he looked really good in that offense. So I guess my problem here would be, as far as fantasy, is if Cook does play, how do they split the carries? Do you almost, if you're a Cook owner, have to throw him in there if he plays? But it worries me, unless you have Matheson in the backup or something like that, you're going to go with both guys. But it's a toss-up this week if both of them have to go, because both of them look good. Obviously, when they're running the ball, not sure how bad Cook's injury is going to hinder him this week if he does play. Jefferson, Thielen, going to get their points, I think, one of them. Okay, one of them they'll have to focus on whoever the Browns decide not to stop. So I would see both these guys will have their points, but one of them might have a big game as the other gets focused on. Tyler Conklin, he was at tight end. He's been questionable all week. He hasn't practiced. It might have to turn to Chris Herndon. And, he's been a tight end. Maybe you never know. 1 week, 2-3 games a year, he has himself a game when he was with the Jets, if he wasn't hurt. So we'll see what happens as far as that one goes. Now, Browns, Baker Mayfield, I think he could actually have a pretty decent game here. It's going to depend on, do the Vikings line up to stop this run game of Chubb and Hunt? These guys are going to have their points. They are. Chubb will get a touchdown, and Hunt will probably get a touchdown. But this game might come down to Odell Beckham and Baker Mayfield looking good. Maybe they get that chemistry going this week, and they might have to, as the Vikings may just line up and say, I'm making Baker Mayfield and these receivers without Landry, with Peoples-Jones and Higgins and ODB coming off his knee injury, I'm making those guys beat me. That might be the route they go. Here's another tight end conundrum. You never know which tight end's going to get the play during the week for each team, for this team in Cleveland. It could be Hooper, who it was last week, and Njoku had played out the games before. Nobody was, Hooper got a touchdown last week, so we'll see. See how that goes. Looking at this game, final score I got 27 Vikings, 24 Browns. I think the Browns cough it up on the road as it gets loud there in Minneapolis. Even though the Browns are -1.5, so obviously the Browns aren't beating the spread. I also have the under on 52.5 with 24-27. I've got the under at 51. Cleveland -125, Minnesota 105. So obviously where I'm saying with this is I'm taking the Minnesota bet because I think Minnesota pulls it out in their home and gets it done. So I just see it that way. I know the Browns are looking good. We're going to find out who the Vikings really are this week. They've looked good. Cousins look good. Are we going to find out who Cousins is? And we will. Next game, snoozer alert of the day, unless Justin Fields plays, because it might be a game to get him on. Right now it looks like if Andy Dalton, they're both limited in practice, Dalton and Fields. I pray they don't go Foles. Then it's a real snoozer here. If the Lions defense shows out like it did this last week against the Ravens, maybe you got something going here. Here is the comparison of what we got. I've got Andy Dalton in here as the comparison. We're not sure where it's going to go yet. I just have him in there because that's their best chance to win. He already won game for them. He is their best chance. Everybody was questioning if there was an offensive line problem that they should go with Fields because he could scramble around. Well, you learned last week that's not how it works. Andy Dalton used to having crappy lines in front of him. He had them in Cincinnati. He's been throwing under pressure for many, many seasons, very experienced, and it proved that everybody was kind of on the wrong board about having Fields out there to get trashed when this offensive line is terrible. So, look, Goff has not had a terrible season. He's just done the reason that they got rid of him in Los Angeles. He's done the things that cost him his job there. The reason they traded for Matthew Stafford. He throws interceptions at inopportune times. He takes sacks at inopportune times. And he fumbles on sacks inopportune times. It's been a death trap sentence for him. He just doesn't stop doing it. Now, he's only thrown 2 INTs this year, but again, one of them cost them momentum. Anytime somebody's got a lead, he seems to turn the ball over, fumble, or throw an interception. He's done it a few times this year. However, he does have good stats of 5 pass TDs and, with only 2 INTs. QBR down there at 94.3. But looking at Dalton, he's only 83.9. Again, the Bears are not going to be some magical team. This is one the Lions could sneak away with. We'll see what happens. It's really going to be tough. If Dalton plays, I think the Lions have less of a shot to win than if Fields plays. Obviously, looking at the fantasy outlook, we've got Dalton up there for it right now. If it's Fields, I'm worried. If it's Dalton, serviceable quarterback, 14 to 17 points, somewhere around there probably. Montgomery may get his work this week. We'll see. He may have work in for him. Again, here's another team. They proved they could stop the run last week. The Lions did against the Ravens. I think maybe that happens again this week. You go, I don't care what quarterback's out there. I'm making that quarterback beat me, and we're coming after him. So could totally see that. You've got Allen Robinson. Mooney has been limited practice all week, and Damiere Byrd. I don't know. Even when Dalton was in there, none of these guys were getting major points. Mooney's made some plays. Robinson has just been, I don't know, we haven't heard from him much at all, which is sad. He had to waste part of his career in Jacksonville, and now he's wasting part of his career in Chicago. Cole Kmet, again, we don't know. Here's a tight end that one week he'll catch 5 passes for 80 yards, and then the next week he catches, 3 passes for 20 yards. And so, it's give and take here. We're not sure what we're going to get with him, especially if Fields plays. I do still worry about Fields. After watching what this Lions defense actually did to Lamar Jackson last week, Fields is nowhere in that category yet. So if Fields plays, I really see some trouble for this fantasy world. On the other end, in golf, he'll get his points. He's not going to have, he's not going to be the leading quarterback of the week. DeAndre Swift's been limited practice all week. Obviously, he's been on the mend. If he can play, he might get a little points. Quintez Cephas and Khalif Raymond and Amon-Ra St. Brown as your receivers here. We'll see. TJ Hawkinson is the man to play. If you have one of these guys out there, I'm not sure. Maybe as Cephas gets a little going. Not sure. Again, not a bunch of excitement here as far as fantasy. Dan Campbell doesn't get his first win as far as my books. It could happen, but I don't see it this week, and I think the Bears beat the spread at 21-17 by a point. Bears are -3, 42.5 points, so obviously I got 38. I'm going under. Detroit +130, Chicago 110. This might be a game, even though I've got this on the board, I might put money on Detroit because if they show up like they showed up last week, and the Bears throw out Fields, obviously this changes the line if any of these things kind of change, but that's why the game's kind of close right now at a -110 and a +130. So we'll see. See where that goes. Don't know how much excitement we're going to get from this game. It might be close as far as a score aspect. Not sure how much of excitement out of a football aspect. Next game, I think blowout of the week. Texans going up to the Bills. This one's not going to be any fun. With Davis Mills starting against that Bills defense in Buffalo, I'm not even taking this in any aspect of any care. Let's just look at the Bills. It's a blowout. And Davis Mills, this is a rough week for this kid, okay? He had to have a short week last week, and now he's got to come in and play the Bills defense in Buffalo. It's not happening for him. Brandon Cooks, obviously he loves, so I could see it's going to be a rough week because that Bills defense is going to key on him and say Cooks isn't beating us and Davis Mills is going to have to beat us all by himself. They'll stop the run game. Don't like any of these players in fantasy. If you're stuck with these guys, then you're in trouble anyway. I wouldn't like Cooks this week, even though he is the go-to guy. He may ball out because they've got to throw the ball to somebody, but the Bills, I think, are going to really have that tight coverage on him. However, they play a lot of man coverage, so Cooks may sneak a couple plays in there to make his points. This screen with the Bills, I like them. This could be a big week for Josh Allen. If you're a Josh Allen fantasy owner, you're probably really excited. Stefon Diggs, I think big week. Sanders, big week. Cole Beasley probably won't have as big a week because they might not, he might get a touchdown or something down by the goal line. However, the two running backs might be looking good this week as the score gets out of control by maybe halftime or so, and they just start running the football. So you got to look for your big points here in the first half, maybe early into the third quarter, and then as the Bills dial it down after this blowout gets going, don't look for any excitement here. So I've got it 38-10. Bills are actually a -17. I actually have them beating that because the Texans and Davis Mills, I don't have them going up there. I have it even on the plus-minus, obviously 48 points. Look at this. This is, everybody knows this is going to be a blowout when the Bills are -13.25 and Houston is +8.25. Now, if you were a super gambling man and you wanted to win some bucks and pray that Houston had some type of win here, obviously you put some dough down. But, if you want to 8 times your money, then you're doing it. So I could see that if you were a real gambling man. Now, moving on into the next game, we've got in our final game that we're going to cover here today, which to me, again, is another one of the better games of the week, is going to be Colts at Dolphins. Not sure how this is going to go. You've got Wentz still has 2 bum ankles. You got Brissett in. The Dolphins have dual coordinators, and nobody can figure out how to call the plays. So I'm not sure who calls certain plays. The Dolphins offense works one or two drives and then doesn't work for 5 drives and then works for 1 or 2 drives and then doesn't work for the rest of the game and then works for the final drive of the game. That's how all the games have gone. Not sure how this is going to continue to go. Carson Wentz doing his job this year. He hasn't thrown a lot of interceptions. That's been the, besides his injury history, that's been the kind of knock on him, is throwing untimely interceptions, kind of like we talked about with Jared Goff. He fumbles when it's inopportune, and he throws interceptions when it's inopportune. He takes sacks when it's He hasn't quite done that this year as bad. He has taken some sacks that have really cost his team, but he's been playing. So 64 for 106. I mean, he's got 60% completion rate. 85.1 in the QBR. Now that's blowing Jacoby Brissett out of the water. However, you can't really count Jacoby Brissett, as he had to come in pretty much unprepared against Buffalo and then play that Buffalo defense. You can say a backup quarterback always prepares as a starter, but they don't. You can pretend that happens. But yes, he doesn't get the game rep or the practice reps during the week, so he can't be as prepared as a starting quarterback. That was a rough week for him. It was a rough week for the Dolphins offense to have to set. So his numbers don't necessarily reflect what's going on. If you look at if you take out the Buffalo game and looked at what happened last week, he's a lot better off, did a lot better job. However, again, like I say, it just worries me about this Dolphins play calling on the offense when you have 2 offensive coordinators sharing time. I'm not sure how they're doing that. It never works out in any part of life. You take 2 kids in the sandbox and you tell them to share the same shovel and dig the same hole. It never works out, so I'm not sure where this is going to go, but it hasn't gone anywhere spectacular yet, as a matter of fact. Now, look at the fantasy outlook. Carson Wentz, again, you're not sure what defense is going to show up for the Dolphins. If the defensive line gets going, and obviously the secondary is their bright spot right now, can he ball out? He has a chance this week. Not sure with 2 hurt ankles. If they press him, think he might have a little bit of a tough week. Jonathan Taylor, if he plays, may have a big week. Dolphins really bad at the run no matter what they do. So Nyheim Hines, if he ends up coming in, or Taylor is kind of limited during the game, maybe both these backs have a big game. Pittman, Pascal, Campbell, again, it just depends on which Dolphins secondary shows up. If the Dolphins come out and play that man press coverage and shut these guys down, it might be a rough week for them. That's why I'm not huge on Carson Wentz, but I do think it's one of those games that you never know a guy can break, because anybody can mess up man coverage. Mo Alley Cox may have to play, as Doyle is a DNP all week, hasn't practiced. So it may be up to Mo Alley Cox as the tight end here. Dolphins, like I said, with Brissett, I think he's actually doing a serviceable job while Tua is out. Myles Gaskin and Malcolm Brown have not been a 2-headed monster, but they may get you a little points this week. Devontae Parker, obviously what's been coming about at this Dolphins offense is Jalen Waddle is becoming the go-to guy. He was for Tua, and he has been for Jacoby Brissett, has been throwing him the ball, and they've been handing him the ball. Jalen Waddle is the number 1 draft pick that they decided to draft. Fuller, obviously, already played 1 game, so his hamstring's hurt, so he's been limited in practice all week. See if he even plays. A lot of times when he was at the Texans, he'd be limited all week, and then he wouldn't even play when it came game time. Or if he did, he played with a hurt, and then catch 1 long pass and be out for the rest of the game. So who knows what's going to go on with him. And so if he doesn't play much, Albert Wilson will probably be that guy who steps in there to that other spot. He's had a ton of drops, had a just a horrific season so far. Mike Gesicki, if you've got to play him at tight end, this might be a good week for you. He may get some play here, but he doesn't have the connection so far with Brissett as he did with Tua, so we'll find out. Looking at this game, I've got Dolphins winning 24-20 since it's in Miami with the heat. I don't know how much the Colts are prepared for it with the humidity. I think that gives the Dolphins a 3-point edge, and since there's going to be a missed extra point or something, they get the 4-point win. So even though the spread, the Dolphins are going to beat it at their -1.5, I've got the over by 1 point from 44. The over-under is 43. Right now, Indianapolis plus 115, Dolphins minus 135. So again, here on the money line, it's kind of a toss-up. However, not such a big toss-up that you can't throw money on anything and get a little bit of bucks back. And that's where we're looking at. So, this was our episode. We covered the 8 games. We got you excited for the weekend. We'll be back tomorrow to cover the rest of the games and let you know what's going on with the hype. And if there's any updates from injuries today that change any of these situations, we'll have them for you tomorrow. So I appreciate seeing you guys. Remember, follow along Gridiron Grubb on Twitter. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. Hit it up on Spotify. Apple Podcast, you can get it. Don't forget to do the 5 stars. And with that being said, peace.